Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the complex world of U.S. immigration. We're going to kind of piece together its history and policies and the human stories, really, to try to understand this ever-evolving issue.
Yeah, and you know what's so fascinating is that immigration, it's not just some modern phenomenon in the
Yeah.
U.S. It's like woven into the very fabric of the nation's identity. Just imagine for a moment your own family history. There's a good chance it intersects with immigration at some point,
Bring it
maybe
up.
even right here in the U.S.
It's true. I was looking at one of those passenger manifests from Ellis Island, from the early 1900s.
Yeah.
The sheer number of people from all over the world, all hoping to build a life in America, it really hits home.
Yeah,
And that's just one little snapshot of a much larger story.
exactly. And, in the 17th century, it was primarily, European settlers. Then the 19th century saw these massive waves of Irish and Italian immigrants, a lot of them driven by famine, economic hardship.
Yeah.
These migrations weren't just about numbers. They fundamentally shaped the U.S., the culture, the economy, even its very identity.
Yeah, we often hear about, the U.S. being a melting pot of cultures, but it's more than just a metaphor, right?
No,
It's
it's
the
really-
direct result of these waves of immigration.
Exactly. And these waves continue to shape the U.S. today.
Yeah.
The 20th and 21st centuries saw a shift with increased immigration from Latin America and Asia. It's like this constantly evolving tapestry,
Right.
each thread contributing to the richness of the overall design.
And within this evolving tapestry, we kind of encounter the complexities of the current immigration landscape, starting with a critical distinction: legal versus illegal immigration. It's a topic that often sparks a lot of heated debate, but for this deep dive, let's approach it with nuance and a focus on understanding the systems at play.
I think that's key. When we understand the systems, we can better understand the human stories within them.
Exactly. So let's start with legal immigration. At its core, it involves a system, a process for people to come to the U.S. with, the proper documentation. We often hear terms like visa or green card thrown around. But what do those actually entail?
Well, think of it like this. A visa is like a temporary pass, right? It allows someone to live and work in the U.S. for a specific period and for a specific reason. Work visas, like what they call the H-1B, those are common.
Yeah.
They attract skilled professionals from around the world. Then there are family reunification visas allowing U.S. citizens and permanent residents to sponsor family members to come to the U.S. And of course, there's refugee status, which offers protection to those fleeing persecution in their home countries.
So it's a complex system with various pathways, each with its own set of rules and requirements.
Right. And it's important to note that obtaining legal status, even temporarily, it's a lengthy and often expensive process. It requires navigating bureaucratic hurdles, providing extensive documentation. Often they're waiting for years.
Which brings us to the other side of the coin, a side often shrouded in misunderstanding and, frankly, fear: illegal immigration.
Yeah. And it's crucial as we delve into this aspect to remember that, we're talking about human beings
Right.
with individual stories and motivations and challenges.
Absolutely. Now, illegal immigration at its core involves entering or remaining in the U.S. without proper authorization, often by, crossing borders without documentation or overstaying visas.
Right. And it's worth noting that the reasons people choose this path, they're varied, they're complex. Some are driven by economic hardship, seeking, better opportunities for themselves and their families. Others are fleeing violence, political instability, or even natural disasters in their home countries.
So while the act itself might be deemed illegal by U.S. law, the motivations behind it often stem from very human and understandable desires, right? Safety, opportunity, a better life. Precisely. And it's in understanding these motivations that we can begin to grasp the true complexities of immigration and its impact on individuals and society as a whole.
And those complexities, those impacts, those are what we'll be unpacking further in this deep dive. We'll explore the challenges faced by immigrants, both legal and illegal, the impact of immigration on U.S. society, and ultimately the search for a humane and sustainable approach to this very multifaceted issue. When we talk about the complexities of immigration, we can't shy away from the challenges, can we? And one that immediately comes to mind is this whole issue of border control. What are your thoughts on how these border control policies kind of impact this whole landscape? Yeah, well, border control is definitely a complex issue, and it has, far-reaching consequences. And these policies, they're aimed at, managing the flow of migrants, but they often create a climate of uncertainty and fear, particularly for those entering the country without authorization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like walking a tightrope trying to balance enforcement of immigration laws with, the humane treatment of individuals.
Right. And the methods used to achieve that balance are often, hotly debated. Take, for example, like the construction of those physical barriers.
Right.
While some argue, hey, this is essential for border security, others see them as these symbols of exclusion. Like they send this chilling message to those seeking, refuge or opportunity.
Right. And then there's the issue of detention centers, which
Yeah.
are intended to house individuals while they await, legal proceedings. But the conditions within these centers, as well as just, the length of time people are held, has sparked some serious concerns from human rights groups.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it raises these complex moral and ethical questions. How do we reconcile um, the need for border control with this humane treatment of individuals, many of whom are fleeing just incredibly difficult situations?
It's a stark reminder that we're not just talking about, abstract policies. We're talking about real people, families, lives kind of in limbo.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, let's kind of shift our focus now to the everyday challenges faced by undocumented immigrants, those living in the US. What are some of the things they grapple with on a daily basis?
Well, I think, that constant fear, right? That constant fear of detection and deportation, that's a heavy burden to carry.
Right.
Imagine living in the shadows,
Yeah.
unable to work openly, access health care without fear, or even, create a stable home environment for your family. That's that's a reality for millions.
Yeah, I was just reading a story about this young woman who came to the U.S. as a child, and she's in college now, bright student, but she lives with this constant fear, like that her status will be discovered, that her dreams will be shattered. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. And beyond that emotional toll, there are significant economic hardships as well. Limited access to, well-paying jobs, exploitation by employers who, take advantage of their undocumented status, restricted access to education and health care. These are just some of the hurdles they encounter.
It's a vicious cycle. You need a job to survive, but without proper documentation, you're kind of forced into these precarious work situations with low wages and little protection.
Absolutely. And
Wow.
and this vulnerability, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
It impacts local communities, and the broader economy as a whole.
That's an important point. So often, these issues are framed as us versus them, but the reality is much more interconnected.
Exactly. When a significant portion of the population, lacks access to health care,
Yeah.
it strains local healthcare systems.
Right.
When families are trapped in a cycle of poverty due to limited job opportunities, it impacts everyone. It's like this domino effect.
You've touched upon, economic hardship, the fear of deportation, but there's another challenge I think we need to address, and that's discrimination and xenophobia.
Yeah.
What role do these factors play in the immigrant experience?
Sadly, xenophobia, it's a reality for many immigrants. And this fear or hatred of, foreigners or strangers, it can manifest as prejudice, discrimination, or even violence,
Yeah.
creating this climate of fear and hostility. And it's often fueled by these negative stereotypes and misconceptions, often perpetuated by, political rhetoric or media portrayals.
Yeah, it's like some people they need to have that boogeyman, right? Someone to blame for societal problems, and immigrants unfortunately are often made into easy targets.
Right, right. It's this dangerous oversimplification that ignores the vast contributions,
Right.
that immigrants make to our society.
Right.
These harmful narratives, they dehumanize immigrants. They paint them as a threat or a drain on society, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. You're right. We've spent a lot of time discussing the challenges, but let's not forget that there's another side to this story. A side filled with contributions, innovations, and just a vibrant tapestry of cultures. Wouldn't you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's easy to get caught up in those challenges, surrounding immigration, but we can't overlook the immense contributions that immigrants make to U.S. society.
Right,
It's
right.
it's a perspective that I think often gets overshadowed.
Absolutely. Yeah, the U.S. has always been a nation of immigrants, and their contributions have shaped the nation into what it is today, and that legacy continues.
Yeah.
Immigrants are enriching the economic, the social, the cultural fabric of the country in just countless ways. Yeah, let's unpack that a bit. Let's start with that economic engine that is immigrants in America.
Yeah, they play a vital role in numerous industries, often filling, really crucial labor gaps. Think about the agricultural sector, for instance. I mean, a significant portion of farm workers in the U.S. are immigrants, right? Ensuring that food reaches our tables.
I remember reading a statistic that really struck me. Over 25% of physicians and surgeons in the U.S. are foreign born.
Yeah, yeah,
And that number is even higher in certain specialties.
right.
So it really highlights, their importance in those key sectors.
Yeah, and it's not just about filling jobs. It's
Hmm.
it's about the economic ripple effect they create.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that immigrants are actually more likely to start businesses than native-born Americans.
Wow.
They're creating jobs, generating wealth, and driving innovation.
It's like that entrepreneurial spirit is kind of woven into their DNA.
Yeah.
They come to this country with this drive to build a better future, not just for themselves, but for their families, their communities, and
That's
that drive benefits everyone,
right.
right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
leads to job creation, economic growth, a more dynamic, forward-thinking society.
Right.
Speaking of dynamism, let's talk about the cultural contributions of immigrants. It's something we often take for granted.
Yeah.
Just the richness and diversity that permeates American culture.
Right. I mean, imagine American cuisine without the influences of, Italian, Mexican, Chinese, countless other immigrant cultures.
Yes.
It's unimaginable. And it's not just about food,
Right,
right?
right.
It's about the music, the art, the literature, the fashion, all these vibrant threads woven into the American tapestry.
Yeah, it's like each new wave of immigrants brings this fresh perspective, a new way of seeing the world, which ultimately enriches us all.
Precisely. They challenge the status quo, they push creative boundaries, and they remind us that diversity is a strength, not something to be feared.
So where does this leave us? We've explored the history of immigration in the U.S., delved into those complexities of legal versus illegal immigration, confronted the challenges, celebrated the contributions.
Right.
What's the takeaway? What's that overarching theme that kind of connects it all?
For me, it really boils down to the need for a nuanced, empathetic, and ultimately humane approach to immigration. It's about recognizing that simple solutions, they rarely address the complexities of such a multifaceted issue.
It's about seeing beyond the labels and recognizing that shared humanity that connects us all.
Exactly. When we create pathways for immigrants to succeed, when we foster a climate of inclusion and opportunity, we all benefit. Immigration, it's an ongoing story, one that's still being written. It's a story of challenges and contributions, of dreams realized and struggles overcome.
And as we've seen, it's a story that touches each and every one of us. It makes you wonder, what role will we play in shaping the next chapter of this ever-evolving saga? That's something for all of us to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious.